Hi, hon. Can you give me 3 minutes?
This is good.
All right. Great, great, great.
Happy Friday.
Oh,
I'm
blessings
gonna
to
be
you.
with you. I'm gonna be with you on Fridays for at least a couple more weeks.
Wonderful.
Thought you'd like to know.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. That helps me a lot.
Yep.
That helps me
Okay.
a lot.
I'm going to call up the pastor. Are you on Facebook yet?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Okay. Are you wearing your glasses?
I am right now.
The cute one.
Well, the ones in black right now.
Oh, the black one.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I like the ones yesterday.
I do too, but I'm wearing black.
Sometimes all black just works.
Uh-huh.
All right. So let me bring up the pastor.
Okay. Let me do this.
We have Reverend Tisha Dixon Williams on.
Fantastic. Pastor, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I am doing fine, thank you.
Good.
Doing fine, doing fine. If I could just figure out how to make this thing work, this would be like fabulous. But I cannot figure out how. I'm just trying to I'm having a connection problem with between my printer and my smartphone, and it is like a whole lot, you know? It's like,
Pastor, could you say a few words for me? Sure. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Thank you.
wonderful. Yay, yay.
You both sound good.
Okay. All right, board operator. We will have a great show. Let the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable in thy sight. Oh, Lord. Help.
Absolutely, we will. And it's Friday.
Yes.
So that's something.
Well, you know, it's always something, but you know what, girl, ladies, and my board operator. Let me tell you something. I don't have any days off, and I'm trying to change that because, you know, I go from this show to another show, and it gets, you know, I'm a little fried. But someone told me I need to start taking some time away, and I'm gonna start doing that every few weeks because it's just.
As a Gen Zer, you know what Gen Z is really good at? Self-care.
Okay, I was going to say, wait a minute, and the children shall lead us. That I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that in a facetious way. I'm very serious.
Because what happened was our parents all burned out, and then they taught us since we were little kids, you got to put yourself first. You got to do self-care. That's why we all do therapy, and we all, you know, and that's not a stigma as much as it used to be because we're like, you know what? You got to take care of yourself first. So, yes, I think 2023 is the year for Santita to, you know, take some time.
Woo! Yes. Seriously, I'm not joking. It's a very serious matter. It's a very serious matter because you look up and um, it's you really need to take care of yourself. I don't know any other way to put it. You know, and I've lost some friends who didn't take adequate care of themselves. So, it's all right. Thank you for that, Generation Zer. And I don't mean that in a facetious way because what our generation minds, I'm older than the pastor. Therapy was kind of where we stopped.
Yeah.
And you can't stop. You can't stop. You gotta keep on going.
Yeah, that's exactly what I meant about that stigma. I know so many people that are, especially people that, have different cultures, people of color, Latinas, like, they don't want to go to therapy unless it's something really, really serious. And it's like, you have to, just how you go to the doctor if you're sick, you got to take care of yourself and how you feel and your mental health.
Right.
We should do a new segment where I just give Gen Z wisdom on Fridays.
No, on Fridays I used to have a psychologist on for an hour. And I'm going to go back to that.
I have a psychology minor.
Yeah, look, I'm going to do that.
I'm down. Let's see if the morning stars are down.
Oh, they will, because that's what we used to do.
We are about to go live. We have about 8 seconds.
Okay, stand by, everybody.
The Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody, it's Friday, February 24th. I hope that you're taking care of yourselves today. Hope that you're getting ready for a magnificent weekend. I'm Santita Jackson. This is the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We've got the mayoral election coming up on Tuesday. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Can you believe it's been 4 years since the last election? Well, believe it, and you can vote right now. Vote right up to and through the 28th of February. That is on Tuesday. So please, you can vote in all of your wards. Get out and vote Chicago. Get out and vote Chicago. We're going to be talking about this race today. On Monday, I'm going to have Commissioner Brandon Johnson. I'm still trying to get the mayor, still trying to get Congressman Garcia, still trying. That having been said, we've been able to let you hear from a majority of the candidates, and they're all great people. And you got to vote for someone. And some people are talking about voting strategically because you have 9 candidates. It's not like you have a bad one in the bunch. Okay. And so now folks are saying we need to vote strategically, something like ranked choice voting, your first, your second, your third choice, because it does appear that there will be a runoff. What about ranked choice voting? Ranked choice. Do you know what it is? We're going to be talking with David Daly, New York Times bestselling author and senior fellow at Fair Vote, about that. And then we're going to talk about critical race theory. A lot of people have pushed back. Well, some people, but a big chunk of folks support Paul Vallis and Law and Order and his pushback on what? Critical race theory, his support of charter schools and vouchers, and on and on and on. So we're going to be talking about that today on the Santita Jackson Show. He has made some negative comments about critical race theory. So what do you think about that? And critical race theory, at the end of the day, is about telling not just from the perspective of the oppressor, but of the oppressed. Yeah. So what do you think about that? Should we be talking about what really happened in slavery? What really happened to the indigenous community? Why people from the south of the border call Texas and California and Arizona and New Mexico El Norte? There's a whole lot to talk about on the Santita Jackson Show. And what do you feel about a mayor who might push back on that? Who might go DeSantis on you? I don't know. Might do it with a smile. I don't know. We're going to talk about that in the second hour of the show. So let's get right to it on today, Friday, February 24th, 2023. Sending you much love, AM 950 Radio in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and all of my brothers and sisters here in Chicago at AM at WCPT 820. Of course, we will be giving you wall-to-wall coverage on election night. You don't want to miss that. But of course, they've had lots and lots of snow in Minneapolis, St. Paul. Hope that you're digging out. Hope that you're safe today. All right, everybody in Chicago, we're going to have a high of 28 degrees, partly sunny. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, 12 degrees, partly sunny. In the NBA, they will be returning from the All-Star break, everybody. That's right. The Hornets will be playing the Timberwolves, and the Nets will be playing the Bulls. Cannot wait for this All-Star break to be over. I want some basketball. In the NHL, however, the Chicago team will be playing the Sharks tomorrow, and the Wild played the Blue Jackets yesterday, shut them out 2-0, and they'll be facing off against the Maple Leafs tonight, everybody. The Poor People's Campaign, they are demanding that the Department of Justice probe over 100 deaths in West Virginia prisons. Everybody. Think about that. What is happening there? And this is the first anniversary, of course, the first anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. So we've got a lot to talk about today on the Santita Jackson Show. What's going to happen with that? When will this conflict end? We don't know. But many people are saying, even the Secretary of Defense, Secretary Austin, said that ultimately you're going to have to negotiate your way out of this conflict. You're not going to shoot your way out. It's not going to be won on the battlefield, he said in a CNN interview from yesterday. Federal officials released an initial report yesterday concluding that the toxic train wreck in East Palestine, Ohio was completely preventable, everybody. The report found that one of the train's cars carrying plastic pellets was heated by a hot axle that sparked the initial fire, according to Jennifer Homedy, the chair of the safety board. And remember, the train, everybody, was 1.9 miles long. Nearly 150 cars. Even if you wanted to stop it, it would take miles, right? It's just simple physics. Think about velocity. Think about that, everybody. And those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. And go to the Supreme Court. They're at it again. They could weaken workers' rights. Everybody, their right to strike. Keep a lookout on everything. That is the only way that this system works, everybody. Oh, and before I forget, under massive pressure, guess what Norfolk Southern did? The train company that is responsible for the disaster in East Palestine, Ohio, and in this region. Well, guess what? Under massive pressure, they agreed to grant paid sick leave to more than 3,000 unionized workers. So there is a bright spot. All right, Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams, I see you, sis, and I hear you, sis, and we love having you on the Santita Jackson Show. Of course, she's the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Bridgehampton, New York. We just love having her. And we need some good news today. You know, our brothers and sisters all over the country got snowed. I mean, there's even snow in LA. You saw snow in front of a Hollywood sign. What? This is crazy. Oh my gosh. Well, it's wonderful hearing your voice today. What is the good news?
Wonderful hearing you. It's always good to be on. But today I want to talk a little bit about Let It Breathe. I can remember during the COVID-19 crisis, years ago, I can admit I've never been a club person. Unlike 50 Cent says, you will never find me in the club. But all of that changed during quarantine when in March 2020, DJ D-Nice decided to turn on his turntables and his web camera and introduce us to Club Quarantine. It was the first time that the club was able to come to my crib. And it was in that moment that I really maybe clubbing wasn't so bad as long as I could do it at home. But one of the things I remember about D Nice, whenever there was a particular song that he wanted to let play out or a song that moved his spirit, he would always say, I'm going to let that breathe and spin it just a little while longer. Well, I'm reminded of the text in the book of Psalms that says, let everything that has breath praise the Lord. And couldn't we all take a moment just to let it breathe? Couldn't we all use a little bit more breathing room when we're suffocated by bills, when we are choked out by deadlines and our poor choices? Couldn't we all take some time to just let it breathe? The Psalm says, let everything that has breath praise the Lord. What does it mean to let it breathe? To let it breathe, one scholar says, to allow someone to breathe means more than just letting our body get its required amount of oxygen. It also means to allow them the space and air to express themselves. It doesn't mean that someone has to listen, but it does mean that one should not smother them. You let them breathe. So whether you're healing it, helping it, or hearing it, you have to let it breathe. We could all use more breathing room. In other words, when we let it breathe, we give room for restoration, contemplation, and affirmation. And when we look at this text, let everything that has breath praise the Lord, we also see our ability to breathe leads us to adoration. And I'm excited about that. According to the work Songs for Black Lives, let everything that has breath, the complete command of verse 6 of the Psalter, it points to the dimension of not only humanity, but all creation, meaning air, insects, all are called to praise the Lord. Everything that has breath is designed and even commanded to praise God. Isn't that interesting? And here's the prerequisite for praise. All you have to have is breath. If you can inhale and exhale today, the only requirement to praise is to breathe in and out. But what is a praise? Praise means to express warm approval and admiration. To anything. We can praise anyone or anything. We can praise a child for receiving a good grade. We can praise a colleague for a job well done. We can praise a pet for being obedient to a command. We can praise a person for their courage and determination in the face of difficulty. We can praise a loved one in an effort to encourage them. Receiving praise is an affirmation of your accomplishments and skills. So when you're praised, it's feedback that you're doing well in the eyes of someone else. Now imagine this same concept in the context of God. When we give praise to God, we are providing God with feedback that God is doing well in our lives. Here's the deal though, God already knows God is doing well because way back at the beginning, God did some things, made a sun, made moon, made stars, stepped back, checked his own work and said, that's good. God knows God is doing all things well, but our praise and our gratitude and appreciation for God takes it to another level. So I want somebody to know today that maybe you think things are not working in your favor. Here's what I found out. Praise is like a wormhole. It's like a boom tube that gets our wishes and our desires from earth to heaven. And so you can curve heaven. You can push heaven a little bit in your direction when you praise. Let everything that has breath praise the Lord. When I was in Kenya preaching a revival, there was a dog walking the perimeter of the tent. And this dog was in service the whole time, just walking around, sitting, observing the people. Well, guess what, Santita? When I opened the doors of the church and asked everybody to make a choice to make Jesus their choice, nobody moved. But just in the distance, I saw coming down the aisle that little mangy dog. He came right down the aisle when the offering was given and sat right in front of the altar. Let everything that has breath praise the Lord. If a dog can praise, why can't we?
Amen, amen, and amen. If a dog can praise, why can't we? Oh my goodness. Why, oh, why can't I? If I can go over that rainbow, oh, come on. If birds can fly over the rainbow, why can't I? Well, you can. Go on and just be grateful today. Go on and be great. I love you, Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams. How can we worship with you on the weekends?
I love you too. You can worship with me on YouTube at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays and on YouTube. And we would love to have you all come visit us virtually if you're ever in the Bridgehampton, New York area. Come visit us personally.
I love it. Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams, everybody, the First Baptist Church of Bridgehampton, New York. Get that book, I See You, Sis. by Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams. You don't want to miss it. It's going to bless you, ladies. It's going to lift you up in particular. And our gentlemen brothers, it will help you to understand just the blessing, the gift that God made us to be, to be with you so we can be with each other. I love it. All right, everybody. We have got Dr. Shanita Knighton, infection preventionist. Wow. Indeed, she's a registered nurse. She's a research scientist. She has been teaching at college, and now you find yourself in the midst of just 85 miles away from an environmental disaster. Let me just ask you, does that concern you that East Palestine is so close to where you live? Or is it something that you say is far enough away for me not to worry about it?
So I think the thing is like that's subjective, right? Because I don't think anything is ever far enough for us to not have to worry about it. Especially when we're looking at situations such as how I mentioned before, Bedford, Ohio, where the metal plant, exploded. And that's about like literally 20 minutes away from my home. And you have Warren, which is about an hour away from my home, but it's 76 miles away from East Palestine, where a boiler plant exploded. And we like, what is going on in Ohio?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we have had these 3 issues within the last past 3 weeks, and so that's very subjective. Perry, Ohio is near, and that's the nuclear plant that's up the street. And so you look at situations like these, and you just know that we're not far removed from it. And I think that has always been my concern. Not a place to living out of fear, but it helps us to understand how brittle we are when it comes to involving each other. And so I think it's interesting because you mentioned something that's important, and it's not necessarily in the vein of infection prevention and control, but it's a reminder of the things that we don't see. Mm-hmm. So similarly to how with the bare eye you cannot see pathogens such as bacteria, fungus, and viruses that are harmful to our bodies, but we know practices that we need to do in order to be able to keep us safe. It is that reminder for each individual that has a part in society, right? That gratitude for them, because we don't see what they do on a day-to-day basis. So when there is, civil engineers that have to make sure that, the tension and the force and the acceptability of us to be able to drive across the bridge occurs every day, we don't think about that stuff. We take that for granted. The real world workers, that have to make sure that the tracks, are compliant and that everything is going to go smooth. There's so much that requires us to depend on each other in the day-to-day. Even in food prep, when you're saying to yourself, the people that are in the manufacturing plants doing what they need to do, them ensuring that we don't get foodborne illnesses because they're practicing proper hand hygiene and doing what they need to do. So I just say in the spirit of gratitude and continuing to talk about what you and Pastor talked about today, is just really understanding that with those things that we cannot see, the same way that we should be worried because it can impact us is also the same reason why we have to practice gratitude for the things that don't impact us, because we have someone that is doing their job. And that includes our sanitation folks to make sure we got clean water, to make sure our trash is removed. These all go into infection prevention and control. And I think if we recognize that every single living thing or living organ, like everything, on this planet for the most part that we may consume, may interact with, it has some sort of life form that can be, either something that's going to help our immune systems and help our bodies, or it's going to hurt us. And so how do you practice gratitude for those individuals to make sure that we are consumers of more good than more bad? So I just have that to say in the notion of gratitude today, because it just seems to be very fitting. But when I think about East Palestine, it's not gratitude because it's not here, but it is gratitude in the fact that these individuals are brave to acknowledge what's going on, to speak out about what's going on. You have people, such as you, Santita, that are highlighting these tragedies because, yes, there are other places in the United States, not just the FARC, that is a East Palestine that we may not hear on the news. We may not even get any inkling that something is going on unless someone goes to social media or goes to another outlet and bring it to our attention, unfortunately. And I think because of that, it's more of a reason why I preach prevention, because none of us know who lives in those small towns or those unseen areas where resources may not reach.
Dr. Shanita Knighton, everybody. Hey, Dr. Nita. Hey, Dr. Nita. I have a very quick question for you because I've got about 90 seconds before we get out of here. They set up these clinics. Well, you know what? I'll wait till next week. But ruminate. Just think about this. They set up, the state of Ohio set up a clinic for the people of East Palestine. And of course, it was populated by nurses and doctors. But then the doctor said, we're not equipped to deal with what we're seeing. So they had to send these people to toxicologists. Can you just quickly tell us what that means?
Yes, that means that, for example, a toxicologist, and Santita, this had to do with when we were talking last week, he said, should the people be boiling the water? And I was like, I can't even guarantee that because they potentially could be ingesting fumes. Being seen by a toxicologist, meaning that they have been exposed to some sort of toxicity, and when you are exposed to toxicity and you need to see a toxicologist, that is somebody that literally has a strong understanding of what toxics or, what harmful things do to human beings or other living organisms. And so you want somebody on your team like that because they can think about what the harmful effects of chemical agents, that these people have been exposed to can do to their bodies and recommend proper treatment. It's almost like when, somebody say, oh, well, you need to put milk in your eyes for this, or you need to do this in order to be able to get poison out of your system. These are individuals that specialize in that. And so in this particular instance, when you were mentioning that, I said, I can't even give advice on that, Santita, because this is out of the range of typically what I would treat because you're bringing chemicals in there. And I'm not a chemistry major whatsoever.
Me?
And
well,
that's a lot.
I don't practice it. I just
I know. Look, I still think you know more than I know because, look, I just know I would know to send somebody to a toxicologist because I couldn't do anything for it to understand,
well, no, stay right there.
In their body. Our body is made up of chemicals, but they can understand what that toxic environment will do or the adverse effects that it will have on the body.
All right, everybody. Talking with Dr. Shanita Knighton. David Daly's coming up as we talk about ranked choice voting here in Chicago. Wow. Back in just a minute. I don't mean to throw monkey wrenches your way. I know you can handle whatever I've given to you. But it's like I just start looking at things and, I just read stuff and I just start thinking, Dr. Knighton. I just go wait a minute, what was that? What did I miss here? Because they go real fast in these, they start talking real fast. And I'm like, wait. What did you all just say? Okay. All right.
But that's the whole thing is sometimes without the recognition that people listen, that's one reason why that happens. And the other thing is too, is sometimes when you're talking to people and they are in their element of their discipline, they don't have, let's say, the wherewithal to realize that they need to take a step back and break it down in layman's terms so people can understand. And it doesn't mean that we are not intelligent people. It just means that if you are talking, I would say, speech that's in, let's say, the radio business, and you oh, well, the volume got to be this, or this got to be turned to that, and you use a jargon that I don't understand, I'm not going to understand it, and it doesn't make me unintelligent, but that's not my field of work. And sometimes we don't pay attention to that and break it down so that way people that's not in that field can understand. And I think, unfortunately, that's what we deal with when we do get medical professionals at times, scientists at times, and people on TV that give information, and it's like they're talking to you, but they're not breaking it down in a way where people can understand.
Absolutely. No, now you can come back. I mean, I hear you because that's how I feel. I'm like, wait a minute, but that and they purposefully they don't ask the questions. I'm like, wait a minute. Uh, there's
Some people don't know. Like some
no.
people don't even know how to ask the question, and it's the irony, but the reality of it, meaning if you literally give somebody a sentence and you going around, let's say, social ecological model to better understand potential prevention strategies, and they keep going, right? And they keep talking, and you feel stuck on the social ecological model. Like, what's that? And you don't care about what else will happen in the sentence. So you need to understand what that is and wrap your mind around that before you can either respond or understand what's going on. And I just don't think we put enough time in that space. Same thing I say about politics. I get mad when I got to go to the polls sometimes, and I think I'm an intelligent person, but I don't think that the bill, whatever it is, the issues that they put in front of us, I do not. It's like they want people to be written at 12th grade level, but then they want your education and healthcare to be written at a lower level, but then they'll put, a ballot in front of you that seems like it's written at a college level with all this two thou shall. And yet he was supposed to interpret that. And I think it's crazy to me, But that's another prime example of someone expecting somebody to be in politics, which is why it's good to have organizations and people translate the field. Everybody should be given equitable ground to be able to read that stuff equally.
I agree. I'm like, come on, just, we need, because, if it happened in my backyard, I'd want to know wait a minute. Okay, so the doctors, the physicians can't help me, so I have to have a toxicologist. So what does that mean?
Ms. Jackson, we have about 30 seconds to air.
We have Dave Daly?
On.
Okay.
We do not have Ms. Wells on, and I'm having trouble getting hold of her.
Okay, well, if we can get her...
Do you want me to try again at 7?
Yes.
Okay. I can do that.
We'd have to wait until 7:30 for that, though, because I've got that live read.
7:30, right?
Yeah.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you, hon. Thank you so much.
Stand by.
This is the Santita Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show. Let's talk about this Chicago mayoral race. It's a national race. People all over the country, and indeed, a lot of folks from around the world want to see what's going to happen here. Will the incumbent mayor make it into what many people believe will be the primary? Will this insurgent candidate, Paul Vallis, will he be able to get 50% of the vote? And he just might be able to do it if people vote strategically. But then again, so could Chuy Garcia, so could Brandon Johnson. We don't know. Well, what is ranked choice voting? What is strategic voting? Now, see, I read this article in Chicago Magazine, which is very mainstream. It's not Ebony and Jet, but it's Chicago. Get it? And so when I saw this article that said that argued for you to vote strategically, I said, wow, now on the South and West sides, we're not being told this, but we are looking at 9 candidates. And it's a very interesting field because you have one white candidate, you have an Hispanic candidate, and 7 black candidates. So the black vote is splintered for the first time in a long time. So what does that mean? And so it's interesting. This article brings this up, and it's very wonderfully written. Edward Robert McClelland wrote for Chicago Magazine. It goes like this. Sophia King, the alderwoman of the 4th Ward, he argued that she would make an excellent mayor of Chicago. He said, look, her approach to public safety is in the middle of Willie Wilson and Brandon Johnson. Willie Wilson, of course, law and order, hunt them down, the criminals down like rabbits. Of course, he had a son who was murdered in 1995, and Brandon Johnson, treatment, not trauma. He said, wait a minute, she has an approach that makes him feel good. We can uplift police and hold them accountable, she said in a January 19th WGN debate. And indeed, she's impressed a lot of people. But now he, after he gave her all of these accolades, said, I am not going to be voting for her because she cannot win. So what does that mean? What does that mean? He said, I won't be voting for King on February 26th because she can't win. She's raised only 1/10 of what the mayor's been able to raise. But so I want to make my vote count. Now, in other places, New York City, you have what you call ranked choice voting. You have people who vote strategically. What do you think about that? Do you think that's something that should be employed here? What does all of that mean, and how could it impact Chicago politics, state politics, county politics, national politics? How could it, what difference would it make if we had ranked choice voting, if we voted strategically here in Chicago? Of course, we have the brilliant New York Times bestselling author of Rat Effed, that's right, The True Story of the Secret Plan to Steal Our Democracy and Unrigged, How Americans Are Fighting Back to Save Democracy. Two great books that you need to get. Of course, he's a senior fellow at Fair Vote. We've missed him, haven't seen him in a while, haven't talked to him in a while, but he is never too far from us because no one does greater work in this particular space than my dear brother, beloved, David Daly. David Daly, how are you?
Good morning. I'm great. Thanks for having me back on.
Oh, well, you're home here, so there you go. So talk to me. I mean, we have got 9 people running for office here in Chicago. Nine. But it's interesting. You're watching, we'll be discussing this at the top of the hour. The you now have the leading, the person who has a plurality of the votes according to the polls is Paul Vallas, the only white person running in the race, which is interesting. And so there's that. And we're trying to find out, exactly how all of this will shake out. And so now in Chicago Magazine, which is like New York Magazine, the New Yorker, like, you have these high-toned magazines for these big cities. Now there's someone who's making the argument, wait a minute, I'm going to vote strategically, even though I really like this candidate. She can't win, but there's someone who I want to at least get into the runoff. Talk to me about ranked choice voting. Talk to us about voting strategically. What is that about?
Whenever you have 9 candidates in the field, or sometimes more, right? I mean, here mayoral elections in Chicago have oftentimes had even more candidates than this. U.S. Senate primaries, U.S. House primaries. Whenever you have 9, a dozen, even more candidates in a race, a couple of things happen. First, it becomes possible for someone to win with less than 50% of the vote. So somebody can move on without having a real majority of voters. Somebody can win an election even though more people voted for somebody else. That is not majority rule. That is plurality rule. And whenever a plurality candidate wins, it means that voters have had to engage in the kind of calculus that Mr. McClellan was talking about in that Chicago Magazine piece. You're weighing all of this strategic stuff in your mind. You have to say, well, I really want this person to win, but I don't want that person to win. I'm afraid if I cast my vote for the person I really want, I'm going to help elect the person I don't want. Or if there's 5 black candidates in a race and 1 white candidate, it means that the vote could be splintered among the 5 black candidates and the white candidate wins. Or it means that you have to study the polls to have a sense of whether you're wasting your vote. And as we all know, the polls don't make a lot of clarity or always work anyway. So ranked choice voting is a tool that gives voters the power to rank a field in order. Instead of voting for one candidate, you put several in order, 1, 2, 3. We all know how to rank 1, 2, 3. It's a pretty simple thing to do. We all have a handful of favorites in a field. So it's a simple tool that takes away all of that calculus. It's being used increasingly around the country in big blue cities like New York and San Francisco. It's being used in red states like Utah. It is one of the fastest growing political reforms in the country because it's a truly nonpartisan way to give voters more voice and more choice.
We're talking with choice voting. What does it mean? What does it mean to vote strategically? Indeed, that has been put on the table for this election here in Chicago. Will you vote strategically? This writer from Chicago Magazine said, I love Sophia King. She makes sense to me. She marches right down the middle in between for public safety, for example, between Brandon Johnson, treatment, not trauma. And of course, Brandon Johnson is not saying that you don't arrest people, but he's saying the first line of defense is, first of all, to assess the situation properly and find out if someone is having a mental health episode. You don't need a gun, they need help there. Or do you look at Dr. Willie Wilson and Paul Vallis's approach? I mean, Dr. Willie Wilson said hunt them down like rabbits, but Paul Vallis, to be fair, is running on law and order. So same thing. So what do you think, everybody? Call me at 773-763-9278, 773-763-9278. Will you be voting strategically in this election? You might have a favorite, but you might say, you know what, the polls are not giving them a shot. Do you think that's fair? Because sometimes that helps to incline us toward despair, Dave Daly. Because, you know, it's like...
Sometimes the polls are wrong.
They're wrong.
Sometimes the polls are wrong. And sometimes there's fewer polls than ever because local news has been so hollowed out. Sometimes they're polling a certain portion of the population, but not the entire population, because it's more difficult to do polls these days because everybody has cell phones, and back in the day when they could just call everybody on a landline at home. We should not have to rely on outdated polls to come up with some sort of twisted calculus in our minds and do this kind of pirouette in the voting booth. Ranked choice voting gives voters the tools to vote smartly and simply, and it always produces the candidate with the widest and deepest support. You don't ever again have to go through this kind of difficult calculus before casting a ballot. Calculus that it's really, really easy to get wrong because we don't know who's electable and who's not electable, right? That's what an election is supposed to be for. So a ranked choice election happens almost just like any other election, right? If somebody after the first round has 50% or more of the vote, they win. It's just like any other race. But if nobody has 50% of the vote, an instant runoff takes place. It happens immediately because we've already ranked second and third choices, right? So the candidate who's in last place is erased, the numbers get rerun, and the second place votes for that candidate come into play. So if your favorite candidate comes in last, you still get a second place vote. You rerun the results until somebody gets across 50%. You already have a runoff system in Chicago, but you pull everybody back to the polls weeks later. Between 1994 and 2020, there were 248 runoff elections in this country for major offices, like U.S. House, Senate, Governor, other big statewide elections. In 240 of those 248 elections, turnout declined between the primary and the runoff. Runoffs are expensive. Fewer people come out and vote. So why not take care of this all at once?
We're talking with David Daly. David Daly, the author of Rat Effed, that's right, and Unrigged. Do you think that this would get us closer to a more democratic system? I mean, is this a form of voting that is used around the world? I mean, how does it work exactly? Because if you're, how does it work? I mean, how does this push back against what you've been talking about for some time? Minoritarian rule, where the minority has been ruling. I mean, even Nikki Haley said, "Look, Republicans, we got to win. We've lost seven of the last 8 presidential elections. We're losing. We're going to the White House, but we are losing. We don't have these numbers, and the numbers are shrinking." How would this work in a practical way? Because you do bring up that, you know, we kind of have ranked choice because we have a runoff. Is that kind of like a soft version of it?
A ranked choice election is a better version of a runoff. It's an instant runoff. It gives everybody a say in a runoff election without the added expense and work of coming back out to the polls 6 weeks later. So what you always get is a winner who the most people want to have in office. We have too many people get elected to office with 35% of the vote, right? And when you only need 35% of the vote to win in a 9-person field, or sometimes even less than that, you don't even have to campaign and talk to everybody. You can run a base campaign, a campaign based on a single issue, based on a single community. When you have a ranked choice election, you have to go out and talk to everybody because those second place votes matter. When you can't win with 33% of the vote, when you need 50%, a candidate has to work differently. They have to think differently. They're incentivized to make outreach across the entire city, across all kinds of different neighborhoods and population and people who maybe they wouldn't have to talk to otherwise. And they have to campaign with a different kind of spirit. You can't be tearing folks down and running a super negative campaign when you also have to ask those people if you'll be their second choice if their first choice doesn't win. So this changes the nature of elections for voters because it gives us more power and takes that power away from the polls and the strategists, but it also makes the politicians come closer to all of us.
You know, you do make the point that this does compel those who are running for office to campaign in a positive way, to tell me what you're going to do, not what the other person is not going to do, because you're trying to pick up votes and you want to be thought of in a kindly way by the electorate. So, you know, if I'm not your first choice, well, you might say, but they have some good qualities. But what do you see? I mean, this race in Chicago is a lot. I mean, 9 people, and people have felt that Brandon and Willie Wilson and Sophia King and Kim Buckner and Jamal Green and Rod Sawyer and Paul Vallis and Willie Wilson and the mayor, and I hope I haven't forgotten anyone, but boy, oh boy, I'm looking across the stage in my mind. Chuy Garcia, it's like an embarrassment of riches, if you will. I mean, you have some people who have, you know, who've served well for a long time, whether they've been in elective office or not. And to be told to vote strategically at this time, it's just very, very interesting. You know, one just wonders if this is a form of voting that is beginning to take root across the country. You're right. We see it in San Francisco. We see it in New York. What would it take to see it in Chicago and in other cities? What is the argument that could be made for it?
You know, I think the best argument for ranked choice voting is exactly the kind of election we're having right now. Choice in an election ought to be a good thing. Having 9 qualified, interesting candidates ought to be something that is appealing. Having 5 candidates from the Black community ought to be a sign that the community has arrived in politics, that there are a number of viable leaders. But when you only have to choose one, and somebody can win in a divided field with much less than 50% of the vote, when the work is put on voters to cast strategic ballots and to twist their brain into all kinds of calculus based on polls and fundraising reports, and thinking about who they want most and who they want least, that's making voters do too much work. This is an easier, simpler way to get to a true majority result and to make choice be a good thing for voters instead of being weaponized against us.
We're talking with David Daly about voting strategically. Will you do that? Will you do that? In this article in Chicago Magazine, Mr. McClellan says, look, I love this candidate. This candidate makes a lot of sense to me, but I will not be voting for said candidate because this candidate cannot win. Just, they're not polling well. Even though, have you gotten a call from the polls, everybody? More than likely not. So do we really know how anyone is doing? No. And we have seen a lot of dynamism in the polls. People are moving up and down, sideways, side to side, because every time we see a debate, every time we see them, we see something else. And so our vote changes. I'm not going to say our allegiances change, but certainly the vote does. So what do you think about strategic voting? Strategic voting. Call me at 773-763-9278. 773-763-9278. Hey, Eric, how you doing, sweetie? Will you be voting strategically, or will you vote for the person that you really, really, really want to vote for? I mean, what do you think? What do you think about what will likely be a runoff? Who do you want in the runoff if we're going to have one? Who do you want? And would ranked choice voting, when you have ranked choice voting, do you still have a runoff, David Daly?
You have an instant runoff. So, yes, you get all the benefits of a runoff, which is to say you end up with a candidate that has majority support. But you get to the runoff without having to come back to the polls, risking this huge decline in turnout, the additional expense of holding another election, just the nonsense of having to go through 6 more weeks, and the expense of a campaign and all the ads on TV all that time. You get the election done at once, and you have the runoff between everybody. The election effectively becomes one big instant runoff in which nobody has to vote in with the kind of crazy strategic calculus you're talking about. They get to express the fullness of their opinion, vote for their top candidates, and then we see immediately who wins.
What do you all think, everybody? What do you think? And then what do you think about Paul Vallis and critical race theory? How do you want our children taught in Chicago? How do you want our children taught in Chicago? He's been attending many meetings, you know, these meet and greets that you have with candidates. And most of his meet and greets are populated by people who are Republican, by people who are anti, who are pro charter schools, who are pro vouchers, you know, taking public money for their private means for a school, which is what happened after Brown v. Board of Education, quite frankly, because white parents did not want their children to go to school with black kids. So they then used public funds to build private segregated schools. Yeah. That's why I asked Paul Vallis about that. You know, because when I see vouchers, when I see charter schools, so that's what I see. And certainly I want a great public school for every child. That having been said, we don't have the intentionality of creating that reality. We don't. If we wanted to have great public schools in every neighborhood, we would do that. Just like when we want to have war, we do that all the time. So let's talk about, I want to hear your thoughts. Who's number 1? Who's number 2 for you? Who's number 3? Who's number 4? If you had ranked choice voting, if you voted strategically, how would you do it? Do you have a favorite candidate who you say they are not polling, they are not going to win, so I've got to figure out something else. Because at least if I vote for so-and-so, they will make what could be the runoff. What do you think about that? Call me at 773-763-9278. I've got about 90 seconds, David Daly. What do you want us to know? Because one of the things that you have been pushing against is minority rule. You said we were that's what we got in America today, and that's a very dangerous thing. What are the dangers of minority rule, and how do we get out of it?
You know, you're looking at them in this election. Whenever you have a field of candidates where you've got a whole bunch of people, you risk having someone win when a majority would actually like to see somebody else. And so it doesn't matter whether you're talking about a mayoral race or whether you're talking about a U.S. House primary, when all of the action is effectively taking place in one election with multiple candidates. Ranked choice voting is a tool that empowers voters to look past the polls, look past this calculus of who can win. It gets you to a true majority support. You don't have to make these kinds of compromises. You don't have to engage in this kind of strategy. Strategy and compromises that can be wrong because we don't really know. So let's make it simple. Ranked choice voting is as easy as 1, 2, 3. It's spreading across the country. It would make your elections in Chicago better, simpler, much more majoritarian, likely more positive as well.
Everybody get the book. The books, Unrigged, and Rat Effed. If you want to know why we are where we are and how we can get to a true democracy, these books are your guideposts. Yes, Republicans came together.
Information on ranked choice voting at fairvote.org.
Fairvote.org, and 1-866-OUR-VOTE if you have trouble at the polls. But go to fairvote.org. Go to 1-866-OUR-VOTE. Keep that on your speed dial, everybody, and get out and vote. Don't let the minority control the majority. Let's talk about critical race theory and Paul Vallis. Many places where he's going. Critical race theory is not just about Black people. It's about indigenous people. It's about women. It's about telling history as it was, not telling history not from the space of the oppressor, but maybe the oppressed too should have a voice. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Thank you, David Daly. I'm so glad to hear your voice.
Oh, that was really fun. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Sending you much, 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 much love.
Thank you.
Please, and let me know if you can do Sunday show, because I know Reverend's been asking about you, and we're going to be doing the Chicago election because that is on Tuesday, on the 28th.
Oh wow, fun! I mean, I don't know a lot about the Chicago election.
Well, I think strategic voting and ranked choice. I think you do.
Yeah, I'm happy with it.
Yeah.
That might work. Everybody's
No, just let me know.
touch on it.
Yeah.
I'm able to do it.
Yeah.
Why it's got baseball in Connecticut, I got it.
Okay. And he's getting so big. I found my Christmas picture. It's like, wow, what happened? You know, you can gauge time by the babies. I mean, he went from being a little boy to now he's like, yeah. Because I have the pictures side by side. And I said, wow, look at this. Oh, no, because that helps me. You know, I put them, I'll take a picture for you because I put them together and I said, wow, look at him. It's just, it doesn't take any time. They just grow up just like that. But thank you so much. Sending you much love. My love to you and your family. Of course. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. What do you think about ranked choice voting? What do you think about voting strategically? What about the first anniversary of Ukraine? Wow. And Secretary Austin said, we have to negotiate our way out of this. Okay. Who do we have here? I'm going to start. Whew, okay. All right, everybody. It's great being with you today. Okay. See who. Oh. Okay, who do we have here? Hello?
Hi. Starks.
Okay, Dr. Starks, and who else?
Here.
Hi.
Okay.
You know what? Everyone, I mean, I go from buyer to Bayer, and it's buyer. I'm like,
Miss Jackson,
yes.
we have Dwight McKee, Dr. Starks, and Dr. Bayer.
Yes. And did we get Jeanette, Reverend Wilson?
I tried calling. She didn't answer, so I'm going to keep calling.
Okay.
So I'll let you know who you have.
Okay, let me give you this. Call Erin. If she just let me know. Okay, I'm going to send you her number. You can get her up right now. Okay?
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Jewel.
Of course.
Thank you. How's everyone this morning?
Pretty good.
Okay. Hope you're doing better than fair, Dwight. You need to be doing well, huh? Lord woke you up. Yes, that's right.
What's up, Starks? Yeah, pretty good. How are you doing? Pretty bad. Oh, you're doing great. Come on.
Miss Jackson, we
Yes.
have Attorney Connolly on. At this moment, I don't have enough lines available to call out.
Okay, that's fine.
Reverend Wilson, but if she's still planning on coming on, if you want to give her the call-in number, she can call in.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm sorry, you know me, I'm trying to do a couple of other things right now. And I want to get this here. Okay. Okay.
All right, we have about 16 seconds or so.
Okay.
Stand by.
Thank you.
Jackson Show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show. It's Friday, Santita Jackson Show. Let me not slur my words. February 24th, 2023. Hope that you're getting ready for a wonderful weekend, everybody. We are of course, on Tuesday, we will be giving you wall-to-wall coverage here at WCPT, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station. And on the mayoral election, you can vote in all 50 wards right now. So get out and vote, everybody. We've had a surge in participation at the beginning of the week. 4 years ago, you had about 2,500 people who voted. More than 40,000 people this year had voted at the beginning of the week. So there is a tremendous amount of interest in this race. And why do you think that is? Is it because of crime, or is it because of race, or is it a combination of things? Indeed, several of the candidates, well, they've inspired passions because they've talked about law and order, they've talked about crime. We're not talking about public school education as much, but of course the corporate media have shaped this narrative. They have made this campaign about crime, and there is one person who stands head and shoulders above everybody else on being law and order, but he also opposes critical race theory. So we've got to talk about that. Critical race theory is not just about teaching about slavery and about Black people. It's about telling the story of the indigenous. It's telling the story of women. It's telling the story of people from the perspective of the oppressed. So we need to talk about that. I mean, because there are a lot of people have a lot of voices, and a lot of voices are going to be excluded if we do not right the ship on the teaching of history. Indeed, Mr. Vallis says that, if you teach history the way that Kimberly Crenshaw, the brilliant legal scholar who really crafted critical race theory, if you teach it that way, white children are going to feel bad. Wow. Really? So let's talk about this, everybody. 773-763-9278. Let's get to some of the headlines so we can get to the rest of the show. In Chicago, we're going to have a high of 28 degrees, partly sunny. Minneapolis, St. Paul, praying for you all with all of that snow, along with 70 million people who have been dealing with this snowmageddon, all this insane weather that we've had. We even had snow over the Hollywood sign in LA. What? Minneapolis, St. Paul, you'll have a high of 12 degrees today, everybody. The NBA is still on their all-star break, but they're about to return. The Hornets will be playing the Timberwolves, and the Nets will be facing off against the Bulls. In the meantime, we've had hockey to keep us company. Chicago will be playing the Sharks tomorrow. The Wild were triumphant over the Blue Jackets yesterday, shut them out 2-0, and they'll be playing the Maple Leafs tonight, everybody. Guess what? The NTSB has said, at least preliminarily, that Norfolk Southern could have completely prevented this disaster in Ohio, in East Palestine, Ohio. That's what they said. And in the meantime, Norfolk Southern is dealing with so much heat. Guess what they did? The railway industry, as I have reported, has not been willing to grant paid sick leave to railroad workers. Well, guess what? Under massive political pressure coming from you, in the midst of this Ohio crisis, Norfolk Southern has agreed to pay sick leave to 3,000 plus union workers. There is a silver lining in this, everybody. That has not happened before, but that is what they have promised to do. Indeed, this is the first anniversary of the invasion of Ukraine, everybody. So we're praying for everyone. And indeed, the Secretary of Defense for the United States, Lloyd Austin, said, this will not be won on the battlefield. It will be won at the negotiating table. Those are just some of the headlines on the Santita Jackson Show. As we're fighting for freedom overseas, as we're fighting everywhere, we want to own homes. That's part of the American dream, right? And so Team Hochberg is putting out a call to first-time home buyers, everybody. A first-time home buyer, which means you have not owned a home within the past 3 years. A first-time home buyer means you have not owned a home within the past 3 years. If that is you, you need to call Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. First-time buyers made up just 26% of home buyers in the past year, down from 34% the year before, which is the lowest it's been, the lowest rate of home ownership that we've had in 40 years, everybody. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac want to turn these numbers around by incentivizing first-time home buyers, that again are people who have not owned a home in the past 3 years, with substantially lower rates. Now, this could change at any time, so you need to call Team Hochberg today. If you are in the Chicago area, if you earn less than $105,700, and have not owned a home within the past 3 years. It's very important, everybody. Call Team Hochberg at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID. Or if you want more information on what they can do for you, go to 56david.com. You need to see if you can qualify for these amazingly low interest rates, which could change at any time. We're not making this up. This could be you, everybody. This special offer can expire at any time. So don't miss this opportunity to secure these low rates. To see if your kids, if your grandkids can qualify for these amazingly low rates and help to build some wealth, some intergenerational wealth. Call them at 855-56-DAVID, 855-56-DAVID, or visit them at 56david.com. Let's talk, everybody, about critical race theory. What is that? Well, we're going to talk about this, but this is what Paul Vallis has said about it. These are his own words on critical race theory. When you introduce a curriculum that is not only divisive, but a curriculum that further undermines the relationship of children with their parents, with their families, that's a dangerous thing. And for white parents, I mean, how are you going to discipline your child when your child comes home and your child has basically been told, that their generation, their race, their parents, their grandparents, they have discriminated against others and they have somehow victimized another's race. Wow. And then he continued, for that matter, if you are a Black child, how do you go home and listen to your parent when your parent has failed to be successful in addressing these historically racist institutional obstacles that have denied them a chance at equal opportunity? And then the interviewer, Mark Lennon, said, Paul, I often wonder if you're a Black kid, why couldn't you become a criminal? If you're hearing this stuff in school, everybody with white skin is an oppressor. If you have Black skin, you're the oppressed. That makes it pretty easy to justify pretty bad conduct, in my opinion. Mr. Vallis's response was, you're absolutely right. But what you're also doing, you're giving people an excuse for bad behavior. You're almost justifying. And then he ranted about Kim Fox. So you're right. You're absolutely right. Where's the accountability? You're a victim. What's happening is it becomes a justification for everything. And I think that's a very dangerous thing. Is that what critical race theory is? So I want you all to talk to me about it. We have got Dwight McKee, brilliant social scientist, and we've got Dr. Robert Starks, indeed, one of our leading academicians. But he's also an activist. That's what's always been so interesting about Dr. Starks. He always comes into these meetings with a bunch of papers under his arm, all this research that he does, educator, political consultant, and activist, and of course, from Northeastern Illinois University Center for Inner City Studies, and someone who has been a principal in our Chicago public schools. He's been on our show. Indeed, he's home here. Dr. Michael Beyer, former Chicago public schools principal. He's an educator and an education consultant. Let me start with you, Dr. Beyer. Talk to me. What is critical race theory to your way of thinking? And does it give Black kids a reason, an excuse to behave badly? Does it give white kids a reason to feel badly?
So critical race theory is it's a law school curriculum, if you want to call it that. It's not taught in kindergarten through high school. Critical race theory it's a red herring being used as code of language to frighten people. But if you want to talk about tenets of critical race theory, what it is, it's mind shaming, because I never went to law school and studied it. And it's saying that what we see in society, the inherent racism and disparities, are caused by systems and structures, historical systems and structures. And so Paul Vallis, what's frightening is that this man has been the superintendent of Philadelphia, New Orleans, Chicago. He was assigned by a former Republican governor in Illinois to oversee Chicago State University, which is our only local HBCU here in Chicago. And this man does not understand critical race theory. That does not excuse anybody or anything, or I should say, doesn't excuse any behavior. What it does is explains what we see in society with our historical disparities. And so we started off the top of the show talking about, new homeowners and Black homeownership, especially in Chicago, is significantly lower. that can be explained through critical race theory. It's not blaming white people, it's not blaming black people. It's saying that there have been historical systems and structures, like redlining, contract selling, that, yes, have been perpetrated by, a handful of white people, or more than a handful of white people, but not all white people. But as a result, that's what we see to this day. It's not giving anyone an excuse to blame or act out or act criminal in any way. It's simply explaining things. And Paul Rouse is as an example, he was son of Greek immigrants, right? It doesn't mean we shouldn't talk about Greek, Turkish, anger and war. We can't teach about any history, because that'll just give him an excuse to be angry at Turkish people by his own reasoning.
Dwight McKee, your thoughts?
Well, we've always said critical race theory. Along with the wind was critical race theory. Custer's Last Stand was critical race theory. Birth of a Nation was critical race theory.
Oh, Lord.
All of John Houston's were critical race theory. It's always been acceptable critical race theory depending on what race you were critical of. That has always been the issue. Is that it's always been acceptable as long as white people were the heroes. And it only becomes an issue when they become the anti-heroes. And the reality is that depending on what point of view you're taking, people who suffered most from their victories see them as anti-heroes. And so Paul Vallis is really a dangerous water, dangerous territory, because his racism at its basic level, and it explains why he gutted the school systems everywhere he's gone. Because in his conscious and subconscious, he really does believe that black people are the reason for their victimization, and that we are who we are and do what we do because if you really look between the lines, because we are socially and genetically inferior, because that's the only way to explain our racism, our situation. If we have not been victimized, and you find us in the condition that we're in, then it has to be by our own hands. It has to be because of something inferior in our culture and in our sociology. Otherwise, there's no way to explain why we are what we are. And if he has no, in my opinion, no justification to be in a mayor of a city that is 40 to 50% minority, if that is the way he really feels about people of color and people who have been victimized by 400 years of racism and 400 years of oppression.
I want to hear from, the academician here. I think we have Erin Connolly up. If we don't, we will have her up soon. But I tell you what, I'm trying to figure out as an academician how you see this, Dr. Robert Starks. I mean, because how do you tell the story of Tulsa without talking about the fact that for the first time in American history that a bomb was dropped on America was by white Americans who hired military veterans to fly military planes and drop bombs on a black community, a black American community. How do you not tell that story? I mean, how do you not tell the story of slavery? How do you not tell what happened to the indigenous people? We're finding thousands, not scores, not hundreds, thousands of indigenous children buried up under these Catholic schools because we tried to make them white. How do you not tell that story? Are you serious right now?
Well, you're absolutely right, and the white is correct, as well as Dr. McGee. I'm telling you, this is really serious. The origin of the theory is that it says, in effect, that America is racist, that it has committed genocide on the indigenous people of this country, and that the bulk of it, the base of it, is embedded in the laws and the statutes of the country, so that it's self-perpetuating. So, I mean, you're absolutely right. How do you then talk about the history of the genocide against indigenous people? How do you talk about slavery? How do you talk about inequality and racism if you cannot tell the true story of America? So critical race theory forms the basis of true history in this country. And in effect, if you dispute or reject critical race theory, as Dwight said, that you are saying to the world that indigenous people of color, who suffer inequalities and racism, are suffering that on their own, and that they are the cause of their own injustices. Isn't that insane? Now, lastly, in Illinois, and this is something that Mr. Ballas has to deal with, about 20 years ago, we began a process of putting together the requirement that in all public schools in the state of Illinois, and this is incorporated in law, has to teach Black history in the public schools. And the same thing with Jewish history, a requirement. And we put a curriculum together to do that. So would he dismiss that Illinois law if he became the mayor of the city of Chicago? Good question. How would he deal with that?
Well, you tell me. I mean, because, but let me pivot to Dr. Beyer, because as a principal who oversees curricula and of all of these teachers, you have teachers in Florida who they don't know what to do. They're like, I don't want to lose my job, but what am I supposed to do? I mean, so what, Dr. Beyer, what do you do? I mean, and how do you determine what is taught in a school? I mean, because in education, aren't you supposed to be telling the truth?
So all my colleagues, former colleagues, especially teachers, former or current librarians in Chicago and elsewhere, they're flabbergasted by this, and they watch what's going on in Florida, and they wonder if it's going to come to Chicago or elsewhere in the country. And the problem is that the curriculum has been outsourced to parent advocates and the most extremists, and it's being controlled by a handful of people like that, who, have somehow won the right to review curriculum, though they're not trained educator. They graduate high school themselves. And so, if Dallas is elected mayor, fortunately, eventually, hopefully sooner than later, we'll have an elected school board, so he won't have direct control over Chicago public schools like he did, or like every other former current mayor does. However, it's still frightening. I think, I believe, and there's plenty of evidence that shows that critical race theory it's a red herring, and it's being used to drive the privatization of education. And you see this happening, that I think in Arkansas they just passed the right for families to get a voucher to choose their school, and critical race theory is right there amongst it. It's basically a tool that's being used to resegregate our society by saying, well, I don't want my kid to learn about critical race theory because I don't want my white kid to hate himself. So therefore, let's just destroy all public education. That's what's going to happen. And Paul House was the innovator of this. He created Walter Payton School.
Wait, hold on. How did he come up with that? You got to help me with that. Hold on, I have to interrupt you. Because this is like, I'm about to, like, the top of my head's about to blow. How does this teach white kids to hate themselves? You explain that to me. I mean, and the self-loathing of Black children who still choose the white doll. 70 plus years after this experiment? I mean, Black children are still choosing the white doll as the smartest doll, the most beautiful doll. We're still doing that.
Yeah. And so what blew my mind is reading a quote from Val from the interview. He suggested that critical race theory teaches black kids behavioral parents. I've never read that angle. I've heard people arguing, incorrectly so, that critical race theory will teach white people to not respect their own families and whatnot because we and I'm white because it teaches us that we're all oppressors and whatnot. That's the fear of these people, and it's incorrect because again, critical race theory, as I said in the beginning, it doesn't teach anyone to hate anybody. It teaches us to try to change the systems that have kept in place, systems of privileges and oppression of other people. It's not about individuals, it's about systems and structures. But Paul Vallis has created one of the most segregated systems through selective enrollment schools here in Chicago. And I remember when he ran for mayor last time, I was a volunteer on Mara Enya's campaign. And he would brag about creating the Walter Payton School, which is the #1 school in the nation, not because of the curriculum, not because of the teachers, they're all wonderful, but they get that ranking because they select out any student who can't test in. And in Chicago, parents and children are forced and stressed to tutor to get a 99th percentile, and the only families that have those resources tend to be white families. And so Walter Payton School is predominantly white now. And so Vallis has created a system that he will continue as mayor.
Absolutely. And remember, everybody, there's a direct relationship between parental income and high test scores or low test scores. I'm not saying that your child doesn't have to study, but I tell you what, if you went to college and you have a college vocabulary, you pass that on to your children because that's what they grow up around. And the tests are geared toward that. So I think we have Erin Connolly up, but I want to talk about this with you. I want you to call us at 773-763-9278 because I'm part of the first wave. We were Walter Payton's before Walter Payton was. I mean, Whitney Young, when it opened, the superintendent of schools pulled his daughter out of her school and put her in that one. Don't tell me. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute. Oh, you all keep talking during the, Erin, are you there?
Yes, ma'am, I am here.
Okay.
Agreeing with the brilliant panel you've assembled.
Oh, well, no, now we've assembled you. And so, I mean, you're part of it. So I just needed to make sure that you were there. So we'll come to you, but we're on Facebook Live right now, everybody. So start talking because I'm done.
Miss Jackson,
Yes.
I was wondering if I could provide a perspective when we come back from break, a social worker perspective, and my personal perspective.
Yes, let me bring on Erin Connolly, and how would you like to be introduced, board operator?
You could just say your board operator, Jewel, is fine.
Okay, and you are a social worker formerly, or certainly that is your field of study from school?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I have a degree. I have a bachelor's degree in social work and a minor in psychology. And
okay.
Yeah.
No, I just wanted to, that you were so engaged by this topic that you wanted to come in. So
I really am. I would love the chance to be able to talk about it again from a younger perspective, from a non-law perspective. From a young white person perspective, I think all those.
Well, Dr. Byer is white.
Be talked about.
Erin is white. I think this is a conversation for everybody, because
I feel the same way.
If America is going to get well, we all need Dr. Starks, Dwight, Erin, Dr. Byer. Everybody we need to be all in on this discussion. This is not a black discussion. This is an American discussion.
Absolutely. And the idea of this narrative, and I'll talk more during, on air, but just really quick, the idea of this narrative of it turning back on, oh, we can't make the white children feel like they hate themselves, so then the white children become victims. Then white people need to talk about why critical race theory is important for all children growing up in this country to learn. That's it.
Well, and white children and white people need to talk about why they need to be right all the time. Okay? No, because that's
exactly.
It's a sign of spiritual immaturity. No one is right all the time. No one's a hero all the time. We're a mixture of all kinds of things. And if you are above criticism, there's something wrong with you. I said it, mic drop on that. Only people in the world who can't be criticized. Only people in the world who do not have a pejorative attached to them. You got a pejorative attached to indigenous people, to black people, to brown people. You can call everybody a name but them. And I'm not with calling anybody a name. Okay? But enough of this already. Enough. Here you drop a bomb on black people in America and I can't talk about it? Are you nuts? That's what happened to Tulsa.
One thing that has fascinated me is that the same people who are buying into this critical race theory, red herring, as this boogeyman in schools, are the same, are tend to be, you start drawing a diagram of the future, they tend to have a lot of things in common with white folks who are anti-big government, right?
Absolutely.
And the fact is, the federal government and state governments have been the biggest perpetrators of all the things that happen to black and indigenous people in our country. And so you think there'd be an alliance that has actually learned, oh gosh, the reason why, I'm kept poor is because the systems, favor wealthy and white people and, and maintain the level of poverty.
We're going live.
Stand by. No, come on in. That's why I'm glad that's why I curated this group this way. Stand by. Yes. Let's change the world. And you know what? Next week, Jewel, I am going to play a song that I sang with Chris Willis on an album that was released that we're going to re-release that I did some 20 odd years ago. Heal the world, heal our land. I'm going to bring that to you next week. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show on WCPT 820, the nation's largest progressive talk radio station, and AM 950 radio. Yes, that's right, Jewel. You'll hear me singing next week. That having been said, let's get to it. We have got to talk about this. Aaron Connolly is joining Dr. Robert Starks, Dr. Michael Beyer, former education consultant, former principal in Chicago Public School System, Dwight McKee, brilliant social scientist, and of course, my board operator, who is a social worker by training, wants to weigh in on this. But before we get to my board operator, Jewel, let's get to you. And you all keep calling in 773-763-9278. And Aaron Connolly, how do you teach your son? I mean, how do you want this sweet baby to be taught? I mean, how and the people he's got to go into the world with. What do you make of Paul Vallis saying that all this does is justify bad behavior in black children and make white children feel badly?
Yeah, that's just a bunch of nonsense. Reading that quote was infuriating as a mom, as someone who values history and education. And Paul Vallis is touting his resume, reforming, quote unquote, the schools around our nation, when in reality he sells them out to private corporations. He privatizes the school system. He got curriculum that is localized, that is focused on the reality of what our nation stands for. And that is just history. This isn't a theory. This is history, American history. And how I teach my son and how I was taught by my mom growing up was the real history. And sometimes that history is hard. And, I question some of her methods in introducing me to serious topics at a very, very young age. But I leaders, whether they are going to be voters, whether they are going to be just students and humans existing here. We have to tell them the truth. And the more we tell them the truth, the more likely they are to trust the folks that are trying to help them, right? I think we've all had this experience of disillusionment when we find out something about our history as a nation or our parents, right? That is jarring as you grow older. Preparing kids with the truth of our history. When we talk about the story of Emmett Till, we have to tell the truth. We can't pretend this was hundreds and hundreds of years ago. We have to hold ourselves accountable. How are we teaching accountability for these kids growing up to be good citizens if we can't even hold ourselves accountable as a nation for the atrocities that we've committed upon our own people, upon our brothers and sisters who still feel that generational trauma today? So it's a gaslighting all over again, right? When you still, and many folks here on the panel on the show, Santita, I know your family is from the South. There's still a system that exists that is very different depending on what you look like in certain towns in Illinois. So this is not a history that we can put behind us. People are still living these types of things, and the only way we find understanding is by holding ourselves accountable. That's what Paul Vallis is saying he doesn't think we need to do. And that doesn't help anyone. And white kids feeling badly, please. I teach my son that he has all of the privilege in the world. He's a blonde-haired, blue-eyed little white boy, and he will grow up with the privilege. He is called to recognize injustice around him, to be a leader in that, and to ask hard questions, and also to apologize and hold himself accountable, right? That's what we have to teach our men and our women throughout the entire country.
But you know what? He also has to be, Aaron, the fact is, privilege, yes, but the reason he's over here is because he wasn't privileged in Europe. You were at the bottom of the pile in Europe. Tell that part of the story, too.
Yes.
That's the only reason you're here.
And I was going to get to that, right?
Yeah.
People in this country descended from indigenous folks who are the rightful owners of this land. They were brought here as slaves. They arrived as immigrants to this country, period, right? Our family arrived here as immigrants, and that process, was not necessarily a privileged one. And
wait, you know what? Wait. I have to interrupt you here. Let's engage everybody truthfully. Because that's part of the white narrative. I'm an immigrant. No, you're a refugee. If you're Irish, you're a refugee, because you were starving over in Ireland. You were starving in England too. Can you say Oliver Twist? You were struggling in France. Can you say the French Revolution? You were struggling everywhere you were. That's why you're here. So don't play this with me. Oh, I came here and I just wanted to work hard. No. And that's not what you're saying. I'm like, no, stop it. You're here because you were at the bottom where you were. And then you come here and you're trying to put me under the pile. And I'm telling you, that's not going to work anymore. That's over. You got to tell the truth about why we're here. You got to tell the truth about the land we stole. You got to tell the truth. If America is going to be blessed, America has been blessed by God. Now bless God and tell the truth so we can get right. Really, this is infuriating. And
we're talking about
refugees
and people fleeing fascist regimes, and the immigrant debate we're having right now that's reignited is similar, right? The people that came to this country were also fleeing oppression, economic devastation, similar to places like Venezuela right now. So
look, and we're trying to take out Venezuela's oil. That's the only problem. These people are running away from Venezuela. They don't want to leave Venezuela. We're trying to starve Venezuela like we're trying to starve Cuba. We make these men and women of color who want to be free, we make them pay. And we need to stop it. Dr. King said it so clearly, Dwight, before I get to my board operator, said it so many years ago. He said, America's arrogance, your hubris, if you will, your excessive pride and arrogance is going to get you in trouble. Because what is going to happen? Some nation, you won't even know their name, China, and they're going to rise up and get you straight. the most powerful economy, the biggest economy in the world right now, according to the McKinsey Company, one of the most exclusive financial firms on earth. They said it is China, it is not the United States. I'm an American. You think that makes me feel great? Dwight, very quickly, but I mean, before I get to, yeah, go ahead. Dwight, you were going to say something?
Reality, you know?
Yeah, uh-huh.
When you live in mythology rather than reality, that's a self-esteem issue. That's a self-concept issue. And the fact that these people have to create myths about themselves to feel better about themselves, meaning they're operating at a level of insecurity that needs to be investigated. Because it is that level of insecurity that creates this false superiority complex that puts them in a position that they have to run the world and that people need to be underneath them for them to be successful and legitimate. That God has placed them in a position that everybody has to be underneath them for them to feel good about themselves. It's very interesting that if you say that the Holocaust never happened because you don't want journalists to feel bad about themselves, they will legitimately run you out of town. But you can have the argument that slavery was not as racist as it was and be set up as a legitimate academician in academic circles because you don't want white people to feel bad about themselves. Oh. The inconsistency is very glaring to me.
And anyone who can think. Now, my board operator, Jewel, Generation Zer, fresh out of college, really, and new into this, just as an adult. I mean, you are a young adult. You felt so compelled by this conversation that you wanted to be a part of it. And I certainly welcome it as we, continue to bring in Dr. Starks, Dr. Beyer, and Dwight McKee, and Aaron Connolly. And you have a background in social work. What do you think about this? About someone who could be mayor who would say that all critical race theory is going to do, telling the story the way it actually happened, it's just going to make white kids feel bad. And it's going to justify bad behavior in Black children. Jewel?
Thank you so much, Santita, for letting me be on and join this wonderful panel today. I really felt compelled to talk about this. My perspective comes from, as you said, I graduated last year from university with a bachelor's in social work, and I did not learn about critical race theory until my third year of college. And even as somebody that kind of, I guess, considered myself to be quote unquote woke, when you're a social worker, when you have that kind of heart and that mindset, that's why you go into social work, because you're like, I see all the struggles people go through. You want more. I don't know what I don't know is where you start, and then you're kind of like, I want to know what I don't know. That's what brings you there. Anyway, when I learned about it, the biggest thought that I remember having is, why wasn't I taught this sooner? And why are none of my peers outside of the social work curriculum taught about this? And it really, it was a big deal for me. And, and also having a completely all-white cohort of white women, all of us studying this curriculum, I think it really opened everyone's eyes. I really liked Dwight McKee's point about the Holocaust. I was going to bring that up as well, that, I learned about the Holocaust at, I think, 11 was the first time, and it's a reoccurring theme in American public school education, and I never once felt bad as somebody that is German, that happened. And I just want to also say that as a white person that has lived in poverty growing up, who generations of my family have lived in poverty. I have no generational wealth. I wish I knew about this sooner, because critical race theory helped me understand my own struggles as coming from a poor background, a poor family, and why that was. And I put a lot of inner blame on myself about that, especially growing up. And it wasn't until I got into college that I realized, well, it's not just on me. It has nothing to do with me. It's the way that these systems are set up in our country. And also, it's so much bigger than me. So I just wanted to provide that perspective. And then lastly, the idea of it making white children feel like they hate themselves. I will say, I remember back, I think we learned about slavery in like 5th grade was the first time I heard about it, or like really learned about it in school. And there were some like feelings of maybe white children feeling a little bit like that, but I would like to counter and say critical race theory, teaching the history, is the answer to children not feeling like that. When you educate from a standpoint of this is American history, just like we did with the Holocaust, you're going to alleviate any of that like fear-based education, any tinge of that you might have without teaching critical race theory. So it doesn't make sense to me that it would cause those kind of feelings to stir up in white children. To me, I believe it would do the opposite. Well, I tell you what, Lorraine is saying, thank you, board operator. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Jewel is saying, tell it. I mean, because this is really about, I don't know how you teach children, Dr. Beyer, without teaching children. I mean, are we trying to teach them or indoctrinate them? I mean, what's going on here, Dr. Beyer?
On critical race theory? Or in general?
Just in general, because this is, to me, this is just a piece of it, right? It's just a piece. I mean, because if you're not going to tell, if you're not teaching if you're not telling the truth, you're not teaching history. It's that simple to me.
Yeah, and I want to point out that you don't have to go back to slavery or, the founding of this country to talk about the systems and structures. We're talking about a recent history. I mean, the wealth gap between black and white can be accounted for almost entirely by the GI Bill not being given to black veterans after World War II, and then continued on. And even just recently, you read on the side, and there's articles almost every month about how a home owned by a black family will be appraised at a lower rate, a lower amount, if there are signs that a black family lives there. That's not because the appraiser walks in and says, I'm going to price this lower because the black family living here. What's happening is that those systems and structures, those historical systems and structures that we have failed to address and change, is that we're all taught to devalue blackness, and so that's what's happening. We can blame the appraiser, but that's not the point of this. That's not going to change blaming one or two appraisers. What has to change is that we have to educate people. And that's what has to happen. We don't have to go back hundreds of years. It's happening right here and now. And when you put a person like Paul Vallis as mayor of Chicago in control, and even if he doesn't have direct control over the school system, he'll have direct control over the police department. He'll have direct control over the housing department. All of these departments and systems and structures that have billions of dollars in budgets to influence people's lives for good or better or worse, he has control over. And so for a person who just goes off, clearly not understanding critical race theory, clearly not understanding what it means to teach a child, is frightening. And it just can't happen.
Dr. Starks, your thoughts? I mean, yes.
This is simply, to put it in the simplest terms, the denial of critical race theory is simply the denial of the fact of racism, which of course includes slavery, inequality, both economic and social inequality, genocide of the indigenous people, religious freedom, denial of the history of the struggle for religious freedom in this country, which really comes down to, as you stated, essentially, indoctrination rather than teaching. And in effect, what it really does, it comes down to blaming the victim. Blaming the victim. And that has historically been the case in this country. Most of the propaganda and indoctrination boils down to blaming the victim. So African Americans blame themselves for their inequality. That is the reality. And that's what we have to fight against.
Aaron, I mean, we have an election. Oh, I'm sorry. Please jump in. Yes.
Yeah, again, can you understand that when you deny critical race theory, you're telling indigenous children that the reason why their parents, their ancestors, suffered from genocide is because of them. They were inferior.
Well, or maybe they deserve to be buried up under these schools. I mean, I think no. Speak to these tens of thousands of kids we are finding who have been buried, who were disappeared. Are you serious right now? And wait a minute, because the way, as I've been reading the press reports, Mr. Vallis has been going to these meet and greets, and you can't control what people are going to say at the meet and greets, but people, you attract who you attract. And so he's kind of danced around the issues according to the reports. But the fact is, these people see in him a light, a beacon, who will stand for them. I want vouchers. I want charter schools. These public schools, I don't want my children in there with these dangerous kids. Because see, I went to the Walter Payton of my day, which was Whitney Young, because there was only one. Okay, and everybody fought like mad to get in there. And I get it. That having been said, I think it's a horrible thing that what happened to Inglewood? What happened to Dunbar? What happened to DuSable? What happened to Finger? What happened? You've got brilliance all over town. It is black, it is white, it is brown, it is yellow, it is red, it is straight, it is binary, it is non-binary. It is everything. Everybody matters. And this is shameful what they're doing. And I think that Mr. Vallis, should stand up against this. If you're going to be my mayor, win, lose, or draw, because you can win a race and you can lose the war. And this is not right. It's not right. Dr. Beyer, I mean, because Dr. Beyer has fought and has been beaten up, but you bloodied but unbowed. Because you have pushed. I mean, so go on, talk to me, because I mean, you've been a principal. I mean, what is a principal to do?
Well, again, that's just one person. We have to make sure that people in charge of these systems and structures have an open mind about these things, and he's not it. But I want to point out that when he was superintendent of New Orleans after the hurricane, that was used as an excuse to reconstitute the school district, and they privatized it and made it almost entirely charter. And what happened is black educators, which New Orleans has a long history, as you know, of black people thriving and suffering at different times, but there are a lot of black educators who were forced out after he charterized the public schools. And so you saw some of the things happen. He helped kick off the trend here in Chicago, which brought charter schools and special enrollment and all these different schools to get parents' choice, which is another red herring, right? But as a result, it's a lot of black educators have lost their jobs, and you've seen a black exodus in Chicago. So instead of the black population thriving and benefiting, you see the opposite under leadership by people like Paul Vallis. And so what a principal can do is just hold their own and refuse to bow down to this fear that's created by all this hysteria over critical race theory, and continue to insist on teaching black history, indigenous history, Latinx history,
and Black people, and principals have to push for this. There's plenty of literature and plenty of support out there, and educators have to stand up to do the right thing and not worry about the blowback from themselves. They have to do what's right.
Well, you know what? I want you to stay right here. We're going to talk a little bit more on the other side on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Everybody like and share the Santita Jackson and Friends page. We're talking with this wonderful panel, those who can stay, about this issue. And I'm so glad that you joined us today, Jewel, because we need your perspective. And this is not a conversation for Black people. It is not a conversation for white people. Brown people, indigenous people, yellow people, red people. No. It's a conversation. We are an American family. Reverend Jesse Jackson has often said, we came over here on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. This is the American family. Like it or not, we're a family. And in order for us to get well, we're going to have to get right. And the only way you can get right, my grandma Gertrude, God rest her soul, said, there's one way, it's the right way. And the right way is truth. Not your truth, not my truth. There's no such thing. Truth is neutral. Truth is truth, and a lie is a lie. There is no gray. So let's talk about this, everybody. I got a few more minutes on the other side, but I want to hear from you, Dwight and Dr. Starks and Dr. Beyer and Jewel and Aaron. I want to get some closing thoughts. Thank you, Dr. Knighton. Thank you, Pastor Tisha Dixon Williams. Thank you, David Daly. Everybody get out and vote. And Chaparral, I wish I'd had this information when I had Mr. Vallis on. I didn't have it, but now I've got it. And now vote on it. Back with more on the other side, on the Santita Jackson Show. You know, we'll be talking about this on Keep Up Alive on Sunday at 7 a.m. Central Standard Time. Get your iHeart app so you can listen to us live, everybody. Patriot AM 1150 out of California is our home station. But go on. You know, we're going to be talking about this and other things. Love you, everybody. Have a great weekend. Does anyone else want to jump in? Dwight, do you have anything? Well,
that's why I keep going back to the fact it's a self-esteem issue. Is that the fact that white men, many of them, and so many white men are so insecure that they have to see themselves in charge. You know, it was interesting when Kareem, who I think of in college, played basketball. For the 4 years he played basketball at UCLA, they outlawed the dunk because he was one of the only guys in college at the time who could dunk. And they were embarrassed that he was just dunking over these young white guys, scoring 30, 40, 50 points a game. And so they outlawed the dunk the 4 years he was in school. That's why he had to develop a scout, because he could dunk, and at that point they couldn't. The solution is not to change the rules. The solution is for you to learn to dunk so that you can become competitive. It's that these guys, what they do is when they are losing is they rewrite the rules. It's when the code is taken off and they expose for the evil deeds that they've done, rather than confront the evil deeds and convert. They want to rewrite the rules. They want to rewrite the script. And it's a lie. And it's what Dr. King say, no lie can live forever. No lie can live a long time. The truth at some levels, even when Christian earth is going to rise again. And at some levels, there's going to be a reckoning for these people who have been so inconsistent and so hypocritical. And I hope it starts with violence.
I mean, I'm going to see, because so many Black middle class people support him. Now, that's a fact. I wonder if they would support him if they knew this, and maybe they do, because some of us had got a real issue with needing to feel special too, because we believe the lie is, we believe the rule is the truth. You know, that we're the exceptions, we're different, we're not like everybody else, and that's dangerous. It's awful. It's awful. I mean, Dr. Beyer, are you still there?
I am, yes, ma'am.
So what do we do?
I just want to point out, and I'm a fan of Brandon. I support Brandon Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
But his campaign made a critical mistake when they announced that they're going to raise property taxes on anyone making over $100,000 a year. Because what that does is divides the race economically. And I wouldn't be surprised if that's why you have black middle class and middle class white people not supporting him. Because then people are already frightened of all the hysteria and crime that is happening in every city, which is directly attributable to the backlog of criminal cases in the court system. It's not because of Ken Fox or any other man they want to bring out. It's because of COVID. It caused a backlog. It's caused other crime. It's directly attributable. But Brandon Johnson's campaign made a critical mistake by making an announcement like that. Because now it just gives people an excuse to vote for Dallas, regardless of what race they are.
Oh. Well, I mean, yes.
Yes, I've got to run, but I want to make this statement before I leave. When you talk about wholesale charter schools and privatization, you really are talking about a movement that will resegregate public schools by race and income. And that is really what is happening. As Dr. Byers stated, when you have those charter schools and public schools and private schools, you are really segregating kids by race and economics. And that's the kind of thing that Dallas is pushing. Increase charter schools, increase the privatization of schools, and we cannot allow him to do that. And no one else to do that. So that is what the critical race and the critical race theory fight is about, is whether or not we can continue to resegregate and push even more segregation in the public schools in this country. Can I jump in for 1 second? I just want to point out, though, that public schools, especially places like Chicago, have failed to desegregate. In fact, that's one reason they failed from the beginning. Absolutely. Yeah, from the beginning. And so privatizing them, getting vouchers out, whatever, might not necessarily cause resegregation, but I don't think it's the solution either, especially when you have a history like Paul Dallas, who created schools that ended up being predominantly white. And so either system, I think, can be approved, but not with a person like Dallas in charge. You have to have someone who's sensitive, who's aware, who's going to open up and own the history of our country and whiteness. And then, when it's privatized the public, then you can solve it, but not with Dallas. Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I've got to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
For having me on.
Of course.
Excellent conversation.
Well, thank you. I think it's necessary. Once I got the information, I said, okay. And then Aaron, thank you so much. Aaron, you still there? Okay. Well, let me see who said. Dwight, do you have any closing thoughts? Anyone have any closing thoughts? Anyone? All right. Well, then that is it. I tell you what, we'll be talking about this on Sunday on Keep Hope Alive. Some of it, really, everybody. This is, Jewel, are you there? Okay, I don't want to miss anyone. This is when you have to start telling the truth. You got to tell the truth. That's the only thing that is really going to set you free. That's the only thing that's going to grow the country. That's going to make us right. It's not enough for us just to be here. We need to be right. Got to be right. This is not the way you do this. This is not the way you do this. And someone sent me the transcript. And then I dug up and found the link to this interview and saw this and said, oh, whoa, wait a minute. I wish I had this information on Monday, because I would have asked him about it and I would have pressed him about it. But now you've got it. So now you do your job. I've done mine. That's right. You get to some of these town hall meetings. You make sure that when they have another debate that they ask him this question. You do that. You do it. You do it. You got to do something. It's just like you just can't go to church and ask and have the preacher be your savior. No, you got to do some work too on Monday. As soon as you leave that church, you got to do the work. You got to do the spiritual lifting. You got to vote. So get on out there and do your thing. Get out there and do your thing and understand, because I see how he's campaigning. And, Bless has already gave us his push bona fides and all of that. I got it. And I'm glad that we've been able to work with him. And I'm always going to be able to work with people, whether I agree with you 100%, 90%, 50%, 10%, 1%, no percent. I'm going to work with you. Because my politics are such that I know that I need some wins. And sometimes I win with people with who I'm in a fight. I don't mind a fight. I'm my mama's child. I don't mind that. What I don't like is a fight that's unfair. And it's not right to walk around here and not tell the truth. And the black people in America are the only ones who are asked. We're the only ones who are asked and told, quite frankly, you're playing the race card. You'd never say that to anybody else, ever. And you ought to be insulted. You ought to be insulted that we're told that. You ought to be insulted. You ought to be insulted, if not for you, for your grandmother and your grandfather, your great-grandmother, your great-grandfather, the people who survived slavery. Are you kidding me? You ought to be insulted on their behalf. Of those of us who were brought to the Western world, because every black person, I don't know how black people become Indians when they go to the Caribbean, but okay, I'll go with it. That having been said, black people who were brought over here, we were brought over here to be enslaved, to build the Western world on a European experiment. Economic plunder. That's all it's been. But we're here now. So let's make it right. To the credit of indigenous people, they have not invited us to leave, which they could do technically, but they have not done that. They said, no, we're all here. We're in the same boat. Got it? Okay. So, all right. So now what are we going to do? Everybody, we gotta grow up in our politics. And you can't just be an immigrant, my darling. No. You're a refugee. Because if Europe were so hot, you'd be here. You know what? I'm a fan of HGTV. I love it. Love it. Like I love the Food Network. And what's interesting is how when you go to Europe in particular, not to the so-called developing nations, because they live on quite frankly, the wealthy there and the middle class and upper middle class there live better than we do in the United States. You see how Europeans really live, and they don't live as well as Americans do. Their homes are smaller. They have access to fewer resources. For heaven's sake, you still have kings and queens over there. Okay? And you see the impact when you see how they're living. And so Americans go over there to live, and they're like, wait a minute. I got to pay how much for this little? What? Yeah. So no. You're a refugee, darling. You can be an immigrant. I hear you, but I know you are a refugee because I know the truth. I know how you're living. I know how you were living over there. I know why you ran over here. Tell that truth too. I didn't run over here. I was dragged over here. Tell that truth too. My grandmama and my grandparents or my great-grandparents, they just wanted to work hard. No, they were tired of being enslaved as virtual slaves in Europe, and that's why they're here. That's why. So you're a refugee. Everybody. If your forebears' homes were so fabulous, that's where you'd still be. You are a refugee. So let's just stop. So don't ever tell me I'm playing the race card. Don't you do it. You wouldn't say that to anybody else. Don't you dare say it to me. And I don't play that. And you should stop letting people toy with you about that. Don't play. Don't play. Take a trip to an indigenous reservation and see how they're living. They index worse than black people. Awful. And it's not their fault. They were relegated to that. I saw this special, I think it was on CNN. The wealthiest, they became there was a group, there was an indigenous nation that became the wealthiest group of people in the world. Same thing like Tulsa in the United States. Struck oil on their land, blah, blah, blah. And then, of course, the white majority took it away from them. And then they became the poorest. Enough. And you need to look at your family and say, y'all been wrong. I didn't say you have been wrong. I said y'all been wrong. Just stop it. Stop the injustice. Nobody's winning here. Most Americans can't afford to go to the emergency room. Don't you know that something is wrong? We're paying for wars. We give money to Ukraine before we give it to the United States of America. We give money to Ukraine before we go. The president went to Ukraine before he went to East Palestine, Ohio. Something is off here. It's crazy. And you ought to call crazy crazy. And that's not crazy, it's wrong. Because ain't nobody out of their minds. People are just more invested in their personal wealth than in your public health and in the general health of our country and our countrymen and women. Shame, shame, shame. And you ought to call them out. And in your own maturity, you need to do that. You need to do that. Stand up for yourself. We came over here on different ships. We're in the same boat now. And the only reason everybody is over here is because it wasn't working for us where we were before. That's right. That's what happened. Not the Africans, but everybody else. And indigenous people, they just got everything. They just got pounded to death. You got to tell that truth. Instead of creating this false sense of superiority for people, that is dangerous. For you to feel that you're superior and somebody else is inferior. That is dangerous. Spiritually, it's unhealthy. You can't live like that. It hurts you. It hurts you. You. To be spiritually, think about it. 3/5 human, 7/5 human. That's crazy. You think God really loves me more than God loves you? That's crazy. God loves we're all God's children. All of us. All of us. Nobody is superior. Nobody's inferior. We're all the same. Yeah. I know that to be true. I know that to be true because guess what? We all come in the same way and we leave the same way. We come in alive and then we die. And we all got to go before the same judge. Enough. And thank goodness I don't need to be superior to anyone. I just want to be what God needs me to be. I want to be equal to that task. Why don't you get equal to that? Just try and be right with God. Why don't you just try to do that? I'm doing this the right way. No, you're not. No, you're not. Everybody's afraid of Americans all over the world. No, just stop it. Even Secretary Austin, the Secretary of Defense said, no, we're not going to shoot our way out of this war. We're going to have to negotiate. So why don't you negotiate now? Is it because you want to enrich some more war contractors? Enough. God is not going to bless that. We're the warmongers. We're the ones who perpetuate war all the time. God is not going to bless that because it's ungodly. I don't need God on my side. I'm trying to rise up to get on God's side. Why don't you try that piece? There's enough food on earth for everybody to eat, for everybody to be full. There are enough materials for everybody to have fair housing, decent housing. There's enough. There are just a few people who want too much, and they need to be put in line. And you need to be mature enough to go to your boss and get a livable wage. And you need to fight for your neighbor to get one too. Because what happened to them can happen to you. What happened in East Palestine, several people asked, well, why are you talking about East Palestine? Because it can happen here. These trains run through poor communities, black, white, brown, yellow, and red. Black, white, brown, yellow, and red have toxins dumped on them. The crack that was dumped in the black community in the 80s, well, white folks got opioids in the early aughts. Now they're walking around toothless and pale and too sick to get well. But you didn't pay attention to crack because crack, I'm inferior. Well, now look at what these big pharma did to you. Enough. I don't like what happened with crack. This was dumped in by our government. I don't like what happened with big pharma dumping opioids on you. I can't even get cough medicine when I go to Walgreens or CVS. It's locked away. It's crazy. Enough. That's right. Daryl, you said get right with God. That's right. That's right. With God. You do that. You get right with God. God is on our side. No. You get on God's side. And it is no secret what God will do for you once you get on God's side, once you get right. So enough of my ranting. Enough, Janet. Thank you. But that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, this goes beyond color, y'all. It does. No. Y'all started in Africa anyway. And then we went to all these other places in the world and you physically adapted to the cold. That's it. You adapted to the heat. That's it. If you're under the sun, you need nappy hair to protect your head from all that heat from the sun. If you're going to be in a cold climate, your hair needs to be straight and flat on your head so it could be like a hat. That kind of hat. That's all that is. There is no such thing as good hair or bad hair. Stop, please. We all have red blood. And we all look different. We all kinds of things. And you know what? It's all good. Because it's all God. God made each one of us and knows every hair on each one of our heads. Enough. So come on, everybody. Critical race theory. Oh. And you know what? I'm glad it resonates with you, Janet, because you know what? Enough already. Enough. Got these people like, well, I don't want my children. I want, what you ought to have is a great public school system. By not making sure that every child could be educated, you know what you did? Somebody had the cure for cancer. Somebody had the cure for AIDS. Somebody had a song that needed to be sung, that needed to be written, and you denied them that. And you know what? We're all poorer for it because you felt that you could go past somebody. You don't know where the genius is. You don't know where the blessing is. I know it's everywhere. Genius is not just in wealthy homes, just as, just as, you've got rich people who are spiritually poor, and you got poor people who are spiritually rich, and everything in between. Enough. Y'all, enough. You ought to have a Walter Payton, a Whitney Young, a Northside Prep, a Jones everywhere. And they should not be selective schools. You ought to find the genius everywhere. Find it everywhere because it is everywhere. Remember, Jesus was born down there with the animals and their feces and things like that. That's right. Born in a manger, not in a mansion. In a manger where the cows and the animals were relieving themselves and when they were sleeping. That's where the King of Kings was born and the Lord of Lords. Enough. Enough. And I love you. And just think about that, everybody. Think about that. Think about it. Bless his heart. But should he become mayor, we're gonna deal with him on that. And should he make this runoff, we're going to deal with him on this. Because I don't care what these people say. If you're going to be mayor, you're going to be mayor the right way. That's what we need to do. You're going to do it the right way for the right reasons. And stop exploiting white pain and fear, because that's what's happening too. Yeah. White pain and fear. What? Enough. And you need to stop. You need to go on and grab God so you can stop being so fearful. How about that piece too? How about making sure that everybody has enough to eat? Everybody's got decent housing, food, clothing, and shelter. Why? How about making sure that the schools work for everybody, academic and vocational? How about making America a place where you can really come and make your dreams come true? How about that? Then we will be the city, that beacon that shines on the hill. How about that? Why don't we do that? Why don't you make the dream that Dr. King had a reality? Why don't you do that? Why don't you keep hope alive? Think about that, everybody. Keep hope alive. Don't kill it. Make somebody's dreams come true. And make a world so that they can have their dreams come true, so that they're not snuffed out. I've said enough. I love you, everybody. Love you, love you, love you, Janet. I'm so glad this resonated with you. Jewel, Daryl, everybody, Jarvis, I love you. I love you, everybody. Anthony, hey, hey, hey. And I love you all. And thank you for being with us. And everybody, like and share the show. Like and share, like and share. I'll see you on Keep Hope Alive on Sunday. We'll be very excited to be with you. And I think we're going to talk about this and just this mayoral race. It's so important. But I love you all. And I thank you for getting up with me and being with me and being with each other. And, thank you for blessing each other. Love you, Jewel. Love you, Janet. Love you. Love everybody. Just bless each other and be kind. Carol, love you. Love all of you. And let's love each other. And let's really, really, really do that. And now, before I go, everybody tell everybody that you love everybody. We love everybody. We love each other here. That's what the Morning Stars do. And boy, are we an interesting bunch. We are from everywhere. And you know what? We are family. Black, white, brown, yellow, and red. And we're everything. And we are family. And that is how I see us. We are family. We are family. We're family. I don't care what you look like. I care what you feel like. And if you don't feel right, I'm going to love you into feeling right and being right. That's what we're going to do. You have to have strength to love. Dr. King wrote that book. Let's do that. Love you. Love you. Love y'all. Everybody love each other. Love each other. Love each other. And tell someone that you love them today. And then tell them to pass it on. It might be a stranger. The Bible tells us to love one another. It's not a suggestion, it's a commandment. Not to like one another. You're not going to like everybody. You know what? Kill them with kindness and live into them, breathe into them kindness, breathe into them love. That's what we need to do. And let the kindness come from your heart. Just be a good person and pass that on. Love somebody today. Let that person, the first person you love ought to be you. Because when you love you, you're going to love somebody else. Work on that, everybody. Work on it. Work on it. I love you. I'll see you on Sunday. I'm going to go on and finish my work today. And then I'm going to get my hair done. Love y'all. See ya. God bless you. I love you, love you, love you, love you, love you. That's right. That's right. But you know what? You should respect people, but the love, you're supposed to love. That's the commandment. The commandment. God said you're supposed to love everybody. You got to love. Love you one another. You got to love. No one said that you have to like. But eventually, if you love someone enough, you will like them because you look at their quirks and just say, well, okay, that's just who they are. As my Aunt Addie used to say, my great-great aunt, it takes all kinds to make a world. It takes all kinds to make a world. It takes all kinds. And so it is. I love you, everybody. I love you. It takes all of us. If we were all the same, God didn't make us all the same. We all have different perspectives. And that's why I'm glad Jewel weighed in, and Aaron weighed in, and Dr. Byer weighed in, and Dr. Starks and Dwight. That's what we're supposed to do. Everybody has a different perspective on this thing, and it all matters. It all matters. It all matters. So I want all of my morning stars. I want you to weigh in on these conversations because everybody's perspective matters. Everybody's. We all have something to teach one another. So let's start with reaching one another. And let's love one another, everybody. I love you. I'll see you next week. I'll see you Sunday. Okay? Love you. God bless you.